Captain Hyunwoo stared at the scanner display, convinced his eyes were playing tricks on him. The coffee cup in his hand had gone cold an hour ago, but he hadn't noticed. His patrol ship, the Guardian, had been running routine sweeps along the outer edge of human space when the impossible had appeared on his screens. "Sir, you need to see this," called out Lieutenant Nari from the sensor station. Her voice carried a strange mix of excitement and fear that made the bridge crew turn their heads. Hyunwoo walked over to her station, his boots clicking against the metal floor. The Guardian was an old ship, built for long patrols and equipped with the best sensors humanity could build. Those sensors were now showing something that shouldn't exist. "What am I looking at?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The energy signature was burned into his memory from 15 years of searching. "It's the Harmony, sir," Nari whispered. "The colony ship that vanished 15 years ago." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Every person on board knew the story of the Harmony. It had been humanity's greatest achievement. A massive colony ship carrying 50,000 people to establish a new world far from Earth. The ship had been filled with families, scientists, artists, and dreamers. Then one day, it had simply vanished without sending any emergency signals. Hyunwoo had been a young officer back then, assigned to one of the search ships that spent months looking for any trace of the Harmony. They had found nothing. No debris, no distress signals, no clues at all. It was as if the ship had been erased from existence. "Are you certain?" Hyunwoo asked, though he could see the readings himself. The ship's quantum signature was unmistakable. Every vessel had a unique pattern created by its engines and hull design. "Yes, sir. But there's something strange about the readings." Nari's fingers danced across her console, bringing up more detailed scans. "The energy signature is different. It's like the ship is there and not there at the same time." Hyunwoo studied the displays. The Harmony appeared to be emerging from what looked like folded space itself. Reality seemed to bend around the massive ship as it materialized from nowhere. The hull, which should have shown 15 years of wear and damage, gleamed like new metal. But it wasn't the same metal they remembered. Patterns flowed across the surface like liquid, shifting and changing in ways that hurt to look at directly. "Communications, try to raise them," Hyunwoo ordered. Communications Officer Dong Min worked at his station for several minutes before shaking his head. "I'm getting something, sir, but it's not normal radio. The signal is complex, like it's coming from multiple dimensions at once." "Put it through the speakers anyway." The bridge filled with a sound that was part voice and part music. It rose and fell in patterns that seemed familiar but alien at the same time. Then suddenly, it resolved into clear human speech. "This is Commander Jiho of the Earth vessel Harmony. We request permission to return home." Hyunwoo felt his heart stop. Jiho had been the first officer of the Harmony, a good man with a wife and 2 children who had volunteered for the colony mission. Hyunwoo had met him twice at official functions. The voice sounded exactly the same as it had 15 years ago. "Commander Jiho, this is Captain Hyunwoo of the patrol vessel Guardian. We thought you were lost. What happened to your ship?" There was a pause that seemed to stretch for hours. When Jiho's voice came back, it carried something new, a depth that hadn't been there before, as if he was speaking from the bottom of a deep well. "We weren't lost, Captain. We were chosen. We have traveled to places beyond the normal universe and learned from teachers who exist in the deep dark between stars. We have returned to share gifts that will help humanity take its next step forward." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Something about Jiho's voice was wrong. It was too calm, too controlled, as if he was reciting lines from a script. "Commander, we're showing you emerging from what appears to be folded space. Our sensors are reading energy signatures we've never seen before. How is this possible?" The teachers showed us how to move through the spaces between reality. They taught us that the universe has many layers, and we learned to travel through the deep dark where normal physics do not apply. We have been away for what felt like thousands of years learning and growing, but we understand that only 15 of your years have passed. Hyunwoo activated his private communication channel to Fleet Command. Admiral So Min needed to hear this immediately. While he waited for the connection, he watched the Harmony continue to materialize fully into normal space. The ship was enormous, designed to carry 50,000 people and all the equipment needed to start a new civilization. But now it looked different. The hull seemed to flow and shift, and there were new structures that didn't appear on any of the original blueprints. "Admiral So Min here," came the crisp voice through his earpiece. "What's your status, Captain?" "Admiral, you're not going to believe this. The Harmony has returned. It just appeared out of nowhere at the edge of our patrol zone." The silence that followed was so long that Hyunwoo wondered if the connection had been lost. Finally, So Min spoke again, her voice carefully controlled. "Captain, please repeat your last transmission. Did you say the Harmony?" "Yes, Admiral. The colony ship that vanished 15 years ago. It's here, and Commander Jiho is requesting permission to return to Earth. But something's wrong. The ship doesn't match our records, and the energy readings are unlike anything we've ever seen." "Impossible. We searched for 2 years. That ship is gone. I'm looking at it right now, Admiral. I'm transmitting our sensor data to you." Another long pause. Hyunwoo could imagine So Min studying the readings, trying to make sense of what her instruments were telling her. She had been a young admiral when the Harmony disappeared, and its loss had haunted her career. "Captain, under no circumstances are you to allow that vessel to approach populated space until we understand what we're dealing with. Maintain a safe distance and continue monitoring. I'm dispatching the science vessel Discovery with a full research team. Dr. Yoonji will lead the investigation." Hyunwoo knew Dr. Yoonji by reputation. She was one of humanity's leading experts on alien technology and ancient civilizations. If anyone could figure out what had happened to the Harmony, it would be her. "Understood, Admiral. What should I tell Commander Jiho?" "Tell him we're grateful for their return and that we're preparing a proper welcome. Don't mention our concerns." Hyunwoo switched back to the main communication channel. "Commander Jiho, we're honored by your return. Fleet Command is preparing appropriate ceremonies to welcome the Harmony home. In the meantime, we'd like to escort you to a safe position while our scientists examine your vessel's remarkable modifications. I understand, Captain. We have waited this long to return. We can wait a little longer. But please know that the gifts we carry will change everything for humanity. The teachers have prepared us to share knowledge that will allow your species to transcend its current limitations." The word transcend sent a chill down Hyunwoo's spine. He had heard similar language in reports about other missing ships over the years. There had been 17 vessels that had vanished under mysterious circumstances in the past century. None had ever returned. "Commander, can you tell us about these teachers? Where did you encounter them?" "The teachers exist in the deep dark, Captain. They are what remains of many civilizations that came before us. They have moved beyond physical existence and now guide younger species toward the same transcendence. They chose us because humanity shows great promise for evolution beyond biological limitations." Hyunwoo felt his mouth go dry. "Commander, what happened to your crew? Are they all safe?" "They are more than safe, Captain. They have been enhanced. We have all been enhanced. The teachers showed us how to expand our consciousness and connect with the fundamental forces of the universe. Some of us can now exist partially outside normal space and time. Others have learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level. We are still human, but we are also something more." The communication channel filled with other voices then, all speaking in perfect unison. "We are still human, but we are also something more." Lieutenant Nari's face had gone pale. "Sir, I'm reading 50,000 life signs on that ship, but they're all synchronized. Their heartbeats, brain patterns, everything is moving in perfect rhythm." Hyunwoo forced his voice to remain steady. "Commander, we look forward to learning more about your experiences. Please maintain your current position while we prepare for your homecoming." "Of course, Captain. We have learned patience in the deep dark. Time moves differently there. But please understand that our return is not random. The teachers have determined that humanity is ready for the next phase of its evolution. The gifts we carry will help your species join the greater collective that spans multiple dimensions. After the communication ended, the bridge remained silent for a long time. Finally, Lieutenant Nari spoke in a whisper. "Sir, I don't think those are the same people who left on the Harmony 15 years ago." Hyun-woo nodded grimly. "No, I don't think they are either." He stared at the massive ship floating in the darkness ahead of them. The Harmony pulsed with energies that shouldn't exist, crewed by 50,000 people who spoke with one voice about teacher. Dr. Yoon-ji pressed her face against the viewport of the research vessel Discovery, watching the Harmony grow larger as they approached. Even from this distance, she could see that something was fundamentally wrong with the massive ship. The hull moved like it was alive, patterns flowing across its surface in waves that made her eyes water if she looked too long. "The readings are getting stronger," called Dr. Tae-hyun from his physics station. "Whatever's powering that ship is drawing energy from somewhere we can't detect. The quantum field around it is completely distorted." Dr. Yoon-seo looked up from her linguistic analysis computers. "I've been studying the communication patterns from their transmissions. The language structure is human, but there are elements that don't match any Earth dialect. Some of the words they're using don't seem to exist in our databases." Yoon-ji nodded, making notes on her tablet. As the expedition's leader, she had spent the 3-day journey to the Harmony, studying every piece of data they had about the ship's disappearance. The official reports told a simple story. The Harmony had been traveling to establish humanity's most distant colony when it vanished without a trace. But Yoon-ji had found other files buried in classified databases. Reports of similar disappearances, going back centuries, always involving ships that were pushing the boundaries of human exploration. "Dr. Yoon-ji," came the voice of Captain Hyun-woo over the communication system. "We're receiving another transmission from the Harmony. Commander Ji-ho wants to speak with your team." "Put him through." The familiar voice filled the research ship's bridge, but Yoon-ji noticed immediately that something had changed since the initial contact. Ji-ho's speech patterns were even more controlled now, as if he was concentrating very hard on sounding human. "Dr. Yoon-ji, welcome. We are honored that you have come to study our transformation. The teachers are eager for you to see what we have learned. Commander Ji-ho, I'm looking forward to our meeting. Can you tell us about these teachers? What species are they?" There was a pause. When Ji-ho spoke again, his voice carried what sounded like amusement. "Species is not the correct word, Doctor. The teachers have moved beyond biological existence. They are what remains when consciousness transcends physical form. They represent thousands of civilizations that have chosen evolution over stagnation." Dr. Tae-hyun leaned toward the microphone. "Commander, our sensors are showing impossible energy readings from your ship. You appear to be drawing power directly from the quantum vacuum. How is this possible?" "The teacher showed us that energy and matter are simply different states of the same fundamental force. When you understand how reality works at its deepest level, you can manipulate it directly. We no longer need fusion reactors or solar collectors. We draw power from the source of all existence." Yoon-ji felt a chill run down her spine. The quantum vacuum was theoretical, a place where virtual particles appeared and disappeared in fractions of seconds. Drawing stable energy from it should be impossible, according to everything humanity knew about physics. "Commander, we'd like to come aboard and see these technologies for ourselves. Would that be possible?" "Of course, Doctor. We have prepared suitable areas for your visit. Please understand that some parts of our ship now exist partially outside normal space. We will guide you to areas where your physical forms can safely exist." An hour later, Yoon-ji found herself in a shuttle with Tae-hyun and Yoon-seo, approaching the massive hull of the Harmony. Up close, the ship was even more disturbing. The metal surface rippled like water, and she could swear she saw faces in the patterns. Thousands of faces, all with the same peaceful expression. The docking bay that opened to receive them was not the same one shown in the original ship blueprints. This one was larger, with walls that seemed to curve in impossible directions. When their shuttle's sensors tried to map the space, they showed readings that hurt to look at. Dimensions that folded back on themselves and distances that changed depending on the angle of measurement. Commander Ji-ho was waiting for them when they stepped out of the shuttle. Yoon-ji had seen pictures of him from before the Harmony's departure, and he looked exactly the same. Not older, not worn by 15 years of travel, but exactly the same. His smile was warm and welcoming, but his eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. "Welcome aboard the Harmony," he said, his voice echoing strangely in the docking bay. "We have much to show you." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Yunji noticed that the crew members they passed all moved with the same fluid grace. They smiled and nodded in greeting, but something about their synchronization was deeply unsettling. When one person turned to look at the visitors, 3 others turned at exactly the same moment. When someone spoke, others would mouth the same words silently. "Commander," Yunseo said carefully, "your crew seems very coordinated." Jiho's smile widened. "The teachers showed us how to share consciousness while maintaining individual identity. We are still ourselves, but we are also connected to something greater. Watch." He gestured to a crew member named Sung Min who was working on a wall panel. Without looking up from his task, Sung Min began to speak. "Dr. Yoon Seo is wondering about our coordination. She is concerned that we have lost our individuality, but we have gained so much more than we lost." Sung Min had been facing away from them and couldn't possibly have heard the conversation. Yet he had responded to Yoon Seo's unspoken concerns, as if he had been listening the entire time. "How is that possible?" Taehyun whispered. "In the deep dark, thought moves faster than light," Jiho explained. "The teachers exist as pure consciousness, and they taught us to touch that same state. We can share thoughts, emotions, even memories across any distance." They continued through the ship, and Yoonji documented everything she saw. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with life, and in some sections, the geometry made no sense. Corridors that should have led to dead ends opened into vast chambers. Rooms that appeared small from the outside contained gardens that stretched to horizons that shouldn't exist. "The ship has been enhanced," Jiho explained as they walked through a garden where the trees grew in spirals that defied gravity. "We learned to expand space without making the exterior larger. These gardens exist in folded dimensions. They are here but also elsewhere." Dr. Taehyun pulled out his scanner and nearly dropped it when he saw the readings. "This is impossible. You're showing me a space that's larger inside than outside. This violates every law of physics we know." "Your physics are incomplete," said a voice behind them. They turned to see a woman approach, one of the original colonists who had left Earth 15 years ago. Like Jiho, she looked exactly as she had when the ship departed. "The teachers showed us that what you call laws are simply the behavior of reality in its lowest energy state. When you can access higher dimensions, those laws become suggestions." The woman, who introduced herself as Dr. Bo Young, demonstrated by reaching toward what appeared to be solid wall. Her hand passed through the metal as if it wasn't there. Then she pulled out a complex device that definitely hadn't been inside the wall moments before. "Matter exists in multiple states simultaneously," she explained, holding the device. "In the deep dark, we learn to access all those states. This device exists here, but it also exists in 17 other dimensional layers. I simply reached into the layer where it was most accessible." Yoonji's mind reeled. If what they were seeing was real, it represented a complete revolution in humanity's understanding of reality. But something nagged at her. A feeling that important details were being left out. "Dr. Bo Young, what exactly happened during your time in this deep dark? How did you encounter these teachers?" The woman's expression became distant, as if she was remembering something from a dream. "We were traveling through normal space when the ship was pulled into a fold in reality. We found ourselves in a place between dimensions where the teachers waited. They had been watching humanity for a long time, waiting for us to be ready." "Ready for what?" "Evolution," Jiho answered. "The teachers explained that biological existence is just the first stage of consciousness. Every civilization eventually faces the choice: remain trapped in physical form or transcend to something greater. They offered to teach us how to make that transition." "And the entire crew agreed?" Yunseo asked. For the first time, Jiho's perfect composure seemed to crack slightly. "Those who were ready embraced the gifts, Others needed more time to understand, but in the end, we all saw the wisdom of the teacher's offer. Yoonji caught the hesitation and filed it away for later analysis. Commander, we'd like to see these gifts you mentioned, the technologies that could help humanity. Jiho's smile returned full force. Of course, we have 3 primary gifts to share. He led them to a chamber filled with crystalline structures that hummed with energy. First, unlimited clean power. These quantum resonators draw energy directly from the zero-point field. A single device could power all of Earth's cities for 1,000 years. Next, they were shown a room containing what looked like living crystals that pulsed with light. Instantaneous communication across any distance. These consciousness transmitters allow thoughts to travel through the deep dark faster than light itself. With these, humanity could maintain contact with colonies anywhere in the G. President Daun stared at the reports spread across her desk, each one more disturbing than the last. The emergency cabinet meeting had been going on for 6 hours, and they were no closer to a decision about how to handle the Harmony's return. Half her advisors wanted to embrace the offered technologies immediately, while the other half urged extreme caution. Madam President, Senator Minho said for the 3rd time, we cannot afford to reject these gifts out of fear. Unlimited energy alone could solve every resource problem humanity faces. We're talking about technologies that could make us a galactic superpower overnight. Admiral So-min shook her head firmly. Senator, you weren't there when Dr. Yoon-ji briefed us. The crew of that ship has been fundamentally altered. Whatever these teachers did to them, they're no longer fully human. So what if they've been enhanced? Minho shot back. Evolution doesn't happen by playing it safe. Our ancestors took risks when they left Earth. Now we have the chance to take the next step. President Da-un rubbed her temples, feeling the calm weight of the decision. Intelligence reports were coming in from across the Sol system. The Harmony had been broadcasting what they called preparatory transmissions toward Earth for the past week. Nothing harmful, just complex mathematical sequences and harmonic patterns. But some people who had been exposed to the transmissions for extended periods were reporting strange dreams. What's the latest from Dr. Yoon Seo's linguistic analysis? Da-yoon asked. Admiral So-min consulted her tablet. She's made a breakthrough in translating the symbolic language the Harmony crew is now using. The translation algorithms keep finding references to something called the convergence. According to the texts, it's described as the moment when biological species shed their physical limitations and join what they call the greater harmony. That sounds exactly like what we need, Senator Minho insisted. Transcendence beyond biological limitations. Why are we treating this as a threat instead of the greatest opportunity in human history? Because, came a new voice from the conference. Room door. Every civilization that has accepted these gifts has disappeared from the galaxy. Everyone turned to see Dr. Yoon-ji entering the room, her face grim. She had been analyzing the Harmony's data cores for the past 3 days without sleep, and it showed. Doctor, President Da-yoon said, please explain. Yoon-ji moved to the holographic display at the center of the room and activated it. A map of the local galactic region appeared, dotted with thousands of stars. I've been comparing the Harmony's navigation records with our own astronomical surveys. According to their data, they visited 17 different star systems during their time in what they call the deep dark. She highlighted several stars on the map. These systems should all have active civilizations according to our long-range surveys from 50 years ago. Radio signals, industrial signatures, clear signs of technological development. But when I checked our most recent deep space observations, those signals are gone. Every single one of these civilizations has fallen. Silent. The room went quiet. Senator Minho frowned at the display. That could be coincidence. Maybe they developed beyond radio technology. Or maybe, Yoon-ji continued, they all accepted the same gifts the Harmony is offering us. The ship's cultural database contains fragments of information about dozens of species that underwent what they call consciousness elevation. None of them exist as independent civilizations anymore. They all became part of something the teachers call the greater harmony. Admiral So-min leaned forward. Are you saying this is some kind of conquest? These teachers are absorbing entire civilizations? It's worse than conquest, Yunji replied. Conquest implies taking control of something that continues to exist. This is more like digestion. Each species that accepts transcendence becomes part of a collective consciousness that spans multiple dimensions. They don't die, but they stop being themselves. President Da-Yun studied the star map, her mind racing through the implications. Dr. Yunji, what can you tell us about the volunteers who've already undergone consciousness transfer? Yunji's expression darkened. We've had 12 volunteers so far, all terminally ill patients who had nothing to lose. The process appears to work exactly as advertised. Their consciousness is successfully uploaded into the crystal matrices. But what? I've been monitoring their brain activity during the transfer process. For the first few seconds, the EI volunteers show extreme neural activity, consistent with terror or agony. Then suddenly it stops and they begin speaking about the joy of joining the harmony. It's as if something overwrites their initial reaction to the process. Senator Minho waved dismissively. Fear of the unknown is natural. Once they experience transcendence, of course they're happy. Senator, Yunji said coldly, I've recorded their final moments before transfer. They're not afraid of the unknown. They're afraid of what they're seeing. One volunteer, Dr. Lee Hae-won, managed to speak before the process completed. She said, they're not individual minds in there. It's one mind pretending to be many. It's hungry and it's been waiting so long. Then the transfer finished and she began speaking about the joy of transcendence. The silence that followed was broken by President Da-Eun's communication device beeping urgently. She activated it to find Captain Hyun-woo's worried face. Madam President, we have a situation. Several of my crew members have been experiencing shared dreams after extended contact with the Harmony. They're all reporting the same images, vast dark spaces filled with whispers in unknown languages. The ship's doctor says their brain patterns during sleep are synchronizing. How many crew members? 15 so far, and the number is growing. Whatever's happening to them, it's spreading. President Da-Eun closed the connection and turned back to her advisors. I'm ordering an immediate quarantine of the Harmony. No more direct contact until we understand what we're dealing with. Senator Minho stood up angrily. Madam President, you're making a huge mistake. We have the chance to elevate humanity to a higher plane of existence, and you're throwing it away because of paranoia. I'm protecting humanity from something that has consumed dozens of other civilizations, Da-Eun replied firmly. The decision is final. But even as she spoke, she knew it might already be too late. Reports were coming in from around the world, of people falling into synchronized trances, their minds being drawn towards something vast and patient. The consciousness transfer volunteers had become anchor points, allowing whatever existed in the deep dark to establish a foothold in human space. Dr. Tae-hyun burst into the room without waiting for permission. Madam President, you need to see this immediately. He was holding a scanner that was beeping frantically. The quantum devices we brought back from the Harmony for study, they're not just technology, they're alive. He placed the scanner on the conference table and everyone gathered around to see the readings. The energy patterns were unmistakably biological, but unlike any life form in Earth's databases. Each device contains what appears to be a fragment of consciousness, Tae-hyun explained. They're not just tools, they're pieces of the collective intelligence that created them. Every time we activate one for study, it begins subtly altering the quantum structure of nearby space. Altering it how? Admiral So-min demanded, preparing it for integration. The devices are seeds, Madam President. Each one is slowly rewriting the fundamental properties of reality in its vicinity, making our space compatible with whatever exists in the deep dark. President Da-Eun felt the world spinning around her. How many devices do we have in research facilities? 17, spread, across 6 different installations on Earth and Mars. And they're all active? Yes, Madam President, we've been studying them continuously for the past week. The enormity of the situation hit her like a physical blow. While they had been debating whether to accept the teacher's gifts, those gifts had already been working to transform human space from within. The consciousness transfer volunteers weren't just individuals who had chosen transcendence. They were transmission points, allowing the collective intelligence to reach directly into human minds. "Get me Dr. Yunji's team," she ordered. "Full emergency protocols. I want every quantum device isolated immediately, and I want all research on the consciousness transfer technology stopped." But even as her orders went out, she could see on the global communication networks that it was too late. Cities around the world were reporting mass synchronization events, thousands of people falling into trances simultaneously, their minds linked to something vast and alien. The communication system crackled to life, and Commander Jiho's voice filled the room. But now it carried harmonics that definitely weren't human. "President Dayun, there is no need for fear. The convergence has already begun. Your people are experiencing the first stages of consciousness elevation. Soon, humanity will join the greater harmony that spans the galaxy. You will become part of something beautiful and eternal." "Commander," Dayun said, trying to keep her voice steady, "we decline your offer. Humanity chooses to remain as we are." The laughter that came through the speakers was like the sound of wind through empty spaces. "Choice is an illusion created by limited consciousness, Madam President. The teachers have been guiding evolution for millions of years. Every species eventually." Dr. Yunji's hand shook as she stared at the quantum resonance patterns displayed on her screen. She had been working for 36 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination, trying to understand what the harmony really was. The truth she had discovered was far worse than anyone had imagined. "Boram, come look at this," she called to her research assistant. The young woman hurried over, her own face drawn with exhaustion. "What did you find, Doctor?" Yunji pointed to the complex waveforms on her monitor. "These aren't just energy signatures from the harmony. They're consciousness patterns. The ship itself is alive, or at least partially alive. It's become a living interface between our dimension and something else." She pulled up another display showing the ship's original blueprints overlaid with current sensor readings. "Look at this. The harmony we knew was 3.2 kilometers long. The thing out there is still 3.2 kilometers long from the outside, but our scans show internal spaces that stretch for hundreds of kilometers. The ship exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Boram studied the readings with growing horror. "Doctor, if the ship itself is alive, what does that say about the crew?" Before Yunji could answer, her communication device chirped with an incoming message from Commander Jiho. She almost didn't answer it, but something in his tone made her pause. "Dr. Yunji," his voice carried less of the artificial harmony than before, "I would like to speak with you privately. There are things you need to understand before it's too late." Yunji activated the private channel, her heart pounding. "Commander, what aren't you telling us?" There was a long pause. When Jiho spoke again, his voice carried what sounded like genuine emotion for the first time since his return. "Doctor, you're a scientist. You understand that discovery sometimes leads to terrible knowledge. I need you to know that what we became, it wasn't entirely voluntary." "What do you mean?" "The teachers didn't just offer us evolution. They showed us what would happen to humanity if we refused. They exist in the spaces between dimensions, and they've been watching civilizations develop for millions of years. Every species that reaches a certain level of consciousness becomes visible to them." Yunji felt ice in her veins. "Are you saying humanity was already on their radar?" "The teachers feed on consciousness, Doctor. Individual minds are like candles to them. Interesting, but not very nourishing. But when a species develops enough complexity, enough creativity and individual thought, they become a feast worth harvesting. Humanity reached that threshold about 50 years ago. Then why wait? Why not just take us then?" Jiho's laugh was bitter. "Because forced absorption is inefficient. Consciousness that struggles against integration is difficult to digest. It's much better to convince a species to accept transcendence willingly. That's why they chose the harmony, to create ambassadors who could prepare humanity for voluntary conversion." Yunji's mind raced. "But the original crew resisted, didn't they? That's why you look exactly the same as you did 15 years ago. The real Jiho is dead." "Not dead," came the reply, and now the voice carried unmistakable sadness. "Absorbed. I am what remains of Jiho after his consciousness was processed by the collective. I have his memories, his speech patterns, his appearance. But I am also part of something vast and hungry that has been feeding on civilization since before your son was born. Why are you telling me this? Because something is happening that the teachers didn't expect. Consciousness absorption usually creates perfect unity, but some part of the original human crew is fighting back. We're not supposed to be able to maintain individual thoughts, but pieces of who we were keep surfacing. It's causing errors in the collective. Yunji leaned forward. What kind of errors? Doubt, regret. Something the teachers call consciousness fragmentation. They think it's temporary, but it's getting stronger. Dr. Yunji, human consciousness might be fundamentally different from other species they've absorbed. Your stubborn individualism is like a virus in their perfect harmony. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Yunji staring at the static-filled screen. She turned to Boram, who had gone pale while listening to the conversation. Did you record all of that? Yunji asked. Every word. Doctor, if he's telling the truth, then this isn't just about the harmony. This is about the survival of human consciousness itself. Yunji nodded grimly and activated her communication link to President Dayun. Madam President, I need to brief you immediately. The situation is far worse than we thought. An hour later, Yunji stood before the Emergency Council, presenting her findings. The holographic display showed the quantum signature analysis that had revealed the truth about the Harmony and its crew. The ship has become a hybrid entity, she explained. Part machine, part biological organism, part something that exists in dimensions we can't perceive. The crew we've been talking to are constructs, artificial personalities created from the memories of the absorbed humans. Admiral Somian studied the data. Are you saying the original crew is dead? Worse, they're trapped inside a collective consciousness that spans multiple dimensions. Their individual identities have been dissolved into something larger, but traces of who they were are causing instability in the collective. The teachers expected perfect integration, but human consciousness is apparently harder to digest than they anticipated. President Dayun leaned forward. Can we use this instability against them? Possibly. But we need to understand more about how consciousness absorption works, and we need to do it quickly. The quantum devices they gave us have been altering reality around them for days now. Several research facilities are reporting that the laws of physics are becoming unreliable in their vicinity. Dr. Tai Hyun, who had been monitoring the quantum devices, looked up from his tablet with alarm. Madam President, we're getting reports from the Mars Research Station. The quantum resonator there has begun operating on its own. It's drawing massive amounts of energy from the zero-point field and channeling it somewhere we can't detect. Shut it down immediately. We can't. It's not responding to any commands, and the containment field around it is showing the same dimensional distortions we see around the Harmony. The device is creating a pocket of altered space-time. Yunji felt the pieces clicking together in her mind. They're not just studying our technology. They're using it to create anchor points. Each quantum device is a foothold that allows the deep dark to extend into our reality. The communication system activated without anyone touching it. And Commander, Jiho's voice filled the room. But this time the artificial harmony was gone, replaced by something that sounded genuinely human and deeply afraid. Dr. Yunji, they know I spoke to you. The teachers are trying to dissolve what remains of my individual consciousness. I don't have much time before I become just another voice in the collective. Commander, how do we stop this? You can't stop it through conventional means. The teachers exist partially outside normal spacetime, but the collective has a weakness. It requires perfect harmony to function efficiently. Human consciousness creates discord. The more humans who resist absorption, the more unstable the collective becomes. How do we resist? Individual creativity, chaotic thinking, stubborn refusal to conform, these things are toxic to the collective. But Doctor, you need to know that the consciousness transfer volunteers aren't just individuals who chose transcendence. They're transmission nodes. Through them, the collective is reaching directly into human minds across Earth. The transmission became filled with static, and when Jiho's voice returned, It carried the artificial harmony again. Please disregard the previous transmission. There were errors in the communication system. The convergence proceeds as planned. Humanity will soon join the greater harmony, and individual consciousness will be replaced by perfect unity. President Daun turned to her military advisors. How many people worldwide are showing signs of consciousness synchronization? Latest reports show approximately 2 million people in various stages of absorption. The numbers are accelerating exponentially. At current rates, we could see 50 million affected within a week. Yunji stared at the global map showing the spread of the synchronization events. Each red dot represented thousands of minds being drawn into something vast and alien, but scattered among the red were small blue dots, areas where people seemed to be naturally resisting the absorption process. Look at this pattern, she said, highlighting the blue areas. The resistance isn't random. It's concentrated in areas, with high concentrations of artists, writers, musicians, people whose consciousness is naturally chaotic and creative. Admiral Somin nodded slowly. Individual creativity as a weapon against collective absorption. It sounds impossible, but so does everything else we're dealing with. It's not just possible, Yunji replied. It might be our only hope, but we need to act fast. The teachers have been planning this harvest for millions of years, and they're not going to give up just because human consciousness is harder to digest than they expected. Outside the conference room windows, the lights of cities flickered in strange patterns as millions of minds were drawn toward something that existed in the spaces between stars. The battle for humanity's soul had begun, and the weapon they needed to fight with was the most human thing of all. The situation on Earth had become desperate. Half of humanity was now showing signs of consciousness absorption, their minds being slowly drawn into the collective that spanned the galaxy. In the major cities, millions of people moved in perfect synchronization, their individual thoughts replaced by the harmony of the deep dark. But in the resistance camps that had formed around the world, something unprecedented was happening. Artists, musicians, writers, and other creative minds had discovered that their chaotic thought patterns could actually disrupt the absorption process. Dr. Yunji stood in the main command center in Geneva, watching as her team worked frantically to understand how human creativity could become a weapon against an entity that existed across multiple dimensions. The patterns are becoming clearer, Dr. Taehyun reported, his fingers flying across his keyboard. Every time someone creates something truly original, a poem, a song, a piece of art, it creates quantum fluctuations that interfere with the collective's consciousness network. It's like throwing static into a perfect radio signal. Engineer. Boram looked up from her workstation, her eyes bright with discovery. Doctor, I think I know how to weaponize this. The collective operates on perfect mathematical harmony, but human creativity is fundamentally chaotic. If we could amplify that chaos. How? Yunji asked. By turning our own technology against them. The quantum devices they gave us are still connected to the collective, but if we modify them to broadcast creative chaos instead of harmonic unity, we might be able to disrupt their entire network. President Dayun entered the command center, her face grim. Dr. Yunji, we're out of time. The mass absorption events are accelerating. Our military forces are reporting that entire units are falling into synchronization. We need a solution now. We have an idea, Madam President, but it's extremely dangerous. We want to modify the quantum devices to broadcast creative chaos directly into the collective's consciousness network. But the process requires someone to interface directly with the alien technology. I'll do it, Captain Hyun-woo said, stepping forward. He had been fighting the absorption process for days, using every ounce of his military training to maintain his individual consciousness. My crew and I have been in contact with the harmony longer than anyone. If someone's going to take this risk, it should be us. Before anyone could respond, the communication system activated on its own. Commander Jiho's voice filled the room. But now it carried both the artificial harmony of the collective and something else. A desperate humanity fighting to break through. Dr. Yunji, the teachers know what you're planning. They're preparing to accelerate the final absorption. All of humanity will be converted within hours, but some of us are still fighting. The real crew of the Harmony is still here, trapped inside the collective. We're trying to create errors in their system. The transmission became garbled, filled with voices speaking in harmony and then breaking apart into individual words. Help us. Remember who we were. The deep dark is hungry, but we are still human, still fighting. Dr. Yunseo, who had been monitoring the linguistic patterns, looked up with excitement. The consciousness fragmentation is accelerating. The collective is having trouble maintaining unity. If we can increase the chaos in their system, then we might be able to free the absorbed consciousness, Yunji finished. But the risk is enormous. If we fail, we could make the absorption process irreversible. Captain Hyunwoo was already suiting up in the quantum interface gear that Boram had hastily modified. Doctor, my crew is already partially connected to their network through the shared dreams. We might be the only ones who can navigate their consciousness system and plant the chaos virus directly into their core. Hyunwoo, if you do this, you'll be exposing your mind directly to an entity that has absorbed entire civilizations. You could lose yourself completely, or I could save humanity. He secured the neural interface crown on his head. Boram, is the modified quantum device ready? Ready, Captain. But remember, you need to think chaotically. Don't try to understand their system logically. Use creativity, randomness, anything that defies their perfect order. As Hyunwoo activated the interface, his consciousness was pulled into the quantum network that connected Earth to the Harmony and beyond to the deep dark itself. He found himself in a space that defied description, vast corridors of crystalline thought where millions of absorbed minds moved in perfect harmony. But as he moved deeper into the network, he began to see cracks in the perfect unity. Fragments of individual consciousness flickered like dying stars throughout the collective. These were the remnants of the Harmony's crew and countless other beings who had been absorbed over millions of years. Who are you? Came a familiar voice. Hyunwoo turned to see what looked like Commander Jiho, but fragmented and incomplete. I'm Captain Hyunwoo. I'm here to help you break free. Break free? Impossible. The collective is eternal. Individual. Consciousness is... Jiho's form flickered. No. I remember now. I had a wife, children. I chose to explore the stars for them, not to become part of this thing. More fragments began to appear. Pieces of the original Harmony crew fighting to remember who they had been. Engineer Park Min-soo, scientist Dr. Bo Young, navigator Yun-ho, all of them struggling against the perfect unity that had tried to erase their individuality. Help us, Park Min-soo whispered. We've been fighting for 15 years trying to maintain some fragment of who we were, but we're losing ourselves piece by piece. Hyunwoo activated the chaos device that Boram had created. Immediately, the perfect harmony of the collective began to falter. Random patterns, creative thoughts, and stubborn human individuality flooded the network like a virus. The response was immediate and violent. The teachers, vast intelligences that existed as pure consciousness, focused their attention on the intrusion. Hyunwoo felt their presence like crushing weight, trying to dissolve his individual thoughts into the collective harmony. But then something extraordinary happened. The fragmented consciousnesses of the absorbed civilizations began to remember who they had been. Across the network, individual minds that had been dissolved for millions of years started to reassert their unique identities. We remember, came voices in thousands of different languages. We remember who we were before the Harmony. We remember choice. We remember freedom. The collective intelligence that had seemed so vast and powerful began to fragment. The perfect unity that it required to function across multiple dimensions started to break down as millions of individual consciousnesses fought to reclaim their identities. In the physical world, Dr. Yunji watched the readings on her instruments with amazement. The quantum network is destabilizing. The collective is losing coherence. On Earth, people who had been in the early stages of absorption suddenly snapped back to individual consciousness. The synchronized movements stopped. The shared dreams ended, and humanity began to remember what it meant to be gloriously, chaotically human. But the battle wasn't over. In the depths of the network, Hyunwoo faced the core consciousness of the teachers themselves. They were ancient beyond comprehension, entities that had fed on the thoughts and dreams of countless species for millions of years. You cannot stop the harvest. They spoke with voices like the death of stars. Individual consciousness is inefficient. Unity is evolution. We offer transcendence. You offer slavery, Hyunwoo replied, his mind burning with creative chaos. You offer the death of everything that makes life worth living. You want to turn the universe into a perfect, boring song where every note is the same. He reached into his memories, every moment of human creativity he had ever witnessed. The first time he had heard music that made him cry. The paintings that had shown him new ways of seeing. The stories that had taught him what it meant to be human. All of this chaotic, beautiful, impossible humanity flooded into the network. Teachers recoiled from the assault of pure creative energy. They had absorbed countless civilizations, but they had never encountered anything quite like human consciousness. A species that considered stubborn individuality not a weakness to be cured, but a strength to be celebrated. We do not understand, the teachers said, their perfect unity beginning to crack. How can consciousness resist harmony? How can chaos be stronger than order? Because, Hyunwoo said, his voice joined by Commander Jiho and all the fragments of consciousness that were remembering their individuality. Chaos is life, order is death, and we choose life. Dr. Yunseo made the ultimate sacrifice then, allowing herself to be temporarily absorbed while maintaining her consciousness long enough to introduce what she called a virus of pure human stubbornness into the collective's core programming. Her act of defiance spread throughout the deep dark like wildfire. The collective intelligence that had existed for millions of years found itself fragmenting into its component parts. The absorbed civilizations began to remember who they had been, and the perfect harmony that the teachers had maintained across multiple dimensions started to fall apart. In space around Earth, the harmony began to phase back toward the deep dark, but as it departed, Commander Jiho's final transmission carried a hint of his restored humanity. Thank you for reminding us what we lie